President Biden rolled out a series of executive orders earlier this week aimed at curbing what he's called the national gun violence epidemic. The president called the gun violence issue in the United States a, quote, international embarrassment. His criticism came just a few hours after a mass shooting killed 5 people in South Carolina and hours before a second mass shooting took place in Bryan, Texas. The new action increases regulation or stabilizing braces for pistols that can transform the weapon into a short-barreled rifle. The president is also pushing the Department of Justice to draft up red flag legislation for state and federal guidance. In addition, Mr. Biden bolstered the nation's efforts to curb the so-called use of ghost guns across the country. Alex Gangitano is a national reporter at The Hill. She joins me now from Washington. Alex, good to have you on the show. So some critics are skeptical about whether President Biden's executive orders will actually have an impact. Why is that, and what are the next steps now that the executive order is signed?
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's right. In talking to advocates and people who specialize in gun policy over the last few days, since the president made these announcements, there's definitely some skepticism about if these actions will actually create any sort of difference or be able to even curb the uptick in mass shootings that we're seeing since the pandemic and since things started opening up. So on one of the issues, which is ghost guns, these are basically guns that people get these kits to their homes and they build them at home. So they don't have a serial number on them. So when they show up at a crime scene, they're not traceable. And so this, we're hearing that he wants to, curb the uptick in ghost guns. But skeptics have said that a lot of mass shootings aren't done by ghost guns. I mean, in Atlanta and in Boulder, these were both guns that were purchased and not, built at home. But then we've also heard from people, especially the Pennsylvania Attorney General actually told us in a city like Philadelphia, there's been a huge rise in the use of ghost guns, that it actually would help a place like that and help curb the community violence there. On the issue of red flag laws, so this is basically if a family member, a friend seems to be a person who's in crisis, you'd be able to petition the courts to have a firearm removed from that person. And some states have adopted these. President Biden said that his state of Delaware, his home state, has red flag laws, and it has done good things for the state. On the other end, we've had skeptics tell me that this could actually dissuade people who are gun owners from saying that they need help. If they're in some sort of a crisis situation, they might not speak up because they don't want their guns removed. So there's definitely both sides of the argument here. Of course, gun control advocates are welcoming all of these actions. They're just happy that the president wants to take these initial steps and are hopeful that there'll be more beyond this.
Well, Alex, another thing that President Biden is doing that really is taking the gun industry head on with these executive orders is calling for Congress to end the broad immunity that gun makers have that prevent manufacturers from being sued. What's the significance of this move? How would it work?
Yeah, so this is really a move that would take on the NRA. This is a law that passed in 2005 that, of course, the NRA is supportive of because it allows for gun manufacturers to not get sued if a gun is used illegally, of course, in the sense of a mass shooting or when somebody shoots somebody in a community violence situation, in a domestic dispute, in suicide. There are no repercussions against the gun manufacturers. You can't legally sue them. And so we never hear about, after a mass shooting, a manufacturer getting sued because there's this protection. And so this would kind of turn the tables on that, and perhaps is a huge way to kind of take on the NRA, which of course is a huge thing that gun control advocates want to do, to just make them less protected here in Washington and take away some of their power.
Alex, I think with folks occupied mentally with the pandemic and with other issues, not a lot of people know that gun violence actually soared in 2020, despite the coronavirus-related lockdowns nationwide. According to the Gun Violence Archive, more than 19,000 people died from gun violence in 2020. And now that violence has obviously bled into 2021. Since the start of the year, more than 5,000 people have been killed by gun violence across the country. For perspective, the U.S. now averages almost 50 gun-related deaths every day since January 1st. I'm wondering, Alex, with Democrats holding majority control of the House and Senate, might we actually see Congress take up and possibly pass some common sense gun control laws, or has this issue just become so partisan that there is no way to find common ground?
Yeah, that's the big question. Of course, after 2012 and Sandy Hook shooting, President Obama was in office, and there was real potential to do something on even a background check bill, and nothing got done. And so there are the two pieces of legislation, the background check bill, which would basically just strengthen the system, and then the Charleston loophole bill, which would allow the FBI more time to do background checks. Those have both passed the House. They received some Republican support in the House, but really not a lot. And so then the big issue is in the Senate, can it get the 60 votes, the 10 Republican votes it needs, and the 100% of Democrats on board in order for it to overcome the legislative filibuster? This, of course, is something that Democrats, Senator Chris Murphy, other ones have made such a big point about for years and years, have called for this kind of legislation. They finally have the majority in both chambers. Of course, it's slim, but if anything is going to get done, this could be the time that it is. Of course, though, optimism is still kind of low because Congress it's taken a very long time to do anything. I mean, an assault weapon ban is another thing that the president called for this week, and that would be something Congress could do. In the 90s, under President Clinton, Congress had passed an assault weapon ban. It expired after 10 years, and since then, nothing's been done. So, it's an uphill battle, let's say, in the Senate to actually see if legislation can end up on the president's desk.
Yeah, Alex, I remember, as you mentioned, that there was some very prominent members of the Republican Party who were in support of those universal background checks, comparing it to the background checks that people have to undergo in order to fly in an airplane. And shouldn't we at least expect as much for people who own guns in this country? But we're waiting to see who's going to take what sides on this debate. Alex, thank you.
Thank you.